Welcome to Empowered with Elizabeth Naumovski. What is your relationship with money? And how do you feel about your debt? Are you ignoring it? And is it at the point of bankruptcy? Today I'm speaking with Taz Rajan, who will tell us her journey of immigrating to Canada, her relationship with money, debt, bankruptcy, a divorce, and where she is today. Taz is the community engagement partner at Bromwich+Smith. Taz, welcome. It's so good to see you today.
Thank you so much for having me. And wow, that introduction sounded like the full meal deal.
And that's why I'm so excited to talk to you, because, you know, a lot of people go through so much. I mean, it's that whole roller coaster ride. And people think this only happens to me and only me, and no one else can understand it. And that's why I really wanted to have you on today's show, because you have been through like a crazy roller coaster ride, and you're in a great place now. And I want to really get to that great place and just share it with everybody. So tell us a little bit about your background.
Sure. Yeah, I did immigrate here from East Africa, from Tanzania in the early mid 70s. And so, as you can imagine, my parents were fleeing from basically a government overthrow and stuff like that. So, back home, they were the owners. All of their family members owned businesses, and they had people that worked for them. And you had people to do, like, they had, someone to drive and someone to do the laundry and, all of that, right? But they came to Canada, literally, they really are that story. They had $20 in their pocket when they came to Canada. And here you are now in a new country, foreign language, and none of that other stuff from before really counts for anything. And so, I know my dad started cleaning office bathrooms. My mom was pregnant with my brother at that time. So, she was helping him initially, but then she got way too pregnant, was like, I can't do this anymore. And, we struggled probably for the first time in their lives. I really had no idea that we were struggling. I mean, my parents had 4 children here in Canada by the end of it. I came from Africa, but still, they had 4 children, and all of our vacations and trips were all driving trips, which I just thought was normal. But looking back now, I'm like, there's no way they could have afforded plane tickets for 2 adults, 4 children. My grandmother lived with us. I mean, it's an interesting story for them too, to sort of go from riches to rags to sort of, in some ways, back to riches, or at least, a upper middle class situation for sure.
So, your story is very similar to a lot of people who've come to Canada.
Right.
My parents came here, no language, barely knew each other, and a suitcase with $125, and that was their life savings.
Right.
So how did you go, or how did your parents go from, the rags to riches? How would you describe your relationship with money now?
Well, really interesting. And I've had to do a lot of work on my own money beliefs that I didn't even realize were imprinted on me by my parents. So things like money doesn't grow on trees, or my mom was notorious for saying things like, I'd rather be happy than rich. I'd rather have a good relationship with my family than lots of money, right? So it's really interesting that whatever your parents say, it lives within you, and it does shape you. And it wasn't until many, many years later, in my 30s, when I took a Millionaire Mind weekend, intensive course, that I really started working through those money beliefs that were imprinted on me that I didn't even realize, were there. And what I noticed at that time, I was a mortgage broker. I'd been a mortgage broker for 10 years. And I'd hit this ceiling as a mortgage broker. It was like 2007, where, like, if you could breathe, you could get a mortgage. And if you could breathe, you could be a mortgage broker, right? So
that was just before the financial downturn.
But we didn't know at that time. But, there were young punks in our office who were making 200,000, 250,000. And I was still at my 100,000, which was like what I had done 2 years ago and last year. Like, I wasn't able to break that, because of these beliefs that were underlying. And we think, because they're not conscious, we think that they're not there, or they don't come in the way, but they really do impact our whole relationship with money.
Yeah. And the thing too is, not only do they impact the entire relationship, but everybody has that little voice in their head that kind of guides them whether they're going in the proper direction or not. And it's not
Right.
just, that whole relationship with money, but it's relationships with relationships as well, and other things
Yes.
that you're going through in your life. When we come back, we're going to talk a little bit more about your money relationship in a few moments. Welcome back to Empowered with Elizabeth Naumovski, where we're speaking to Taz Rajan. And Taz, we're talking about your journey. I want to ask you, did your money relationship and money journey change when you got married?
Yes, in a lot of ways, in many ways. So it's really interesting because, there was this turning point where I started to, and I still use it to this point, I started to use an Excel spreadsheet to budget. And I had it down to the penny. And, I was in charge of my money. And I felt really comfortable with how I was managing money. And then I married someone who also has, was in the finance industry. And so we really started to butt heads now, moving in together, sharing the mortgage together. We went old school and opened up a joint bank account, but I was like, well, I'm in control. I look after the finances. And he's like, well, I'd like to look after the finances. And I really fought that for a very, very long time. And then I did a complete 180. And, I'm not sure what caused me to do this, but I just completely went, all right, you're in charge of the finances. And then, when one person kind of leads with finances, it doesn't mean the other just buries their head. You want to still be able to have conversations. You want to have, okay, this is where we're at the month, and, that sort of thing. But I just handed it over and, stuck my
Walked
head in
away.
the sand. And, thinking back now, I think we do this in other parts of our lives too. We abdicate responsibility so that if and when things go wrong, we're not to blame. And I think that's where it was, because not only did I abdicate responsibility, I really became the spender in the household. Like literally just was, because now I'm not tracking every little thing. So I
Right.
wasn't really sure what was going on. I'm like, well, he's in charge. He'll tell me if there's a problem. And, he wouldn't necessarily. But when we did have those conversations, then it felt like daddy trying to tell me what to do.
Oh yeah, that nothing good can come out of that.
That's not a healthy marital relationship. So absolutely it impacted my relationship with my spouse.
So when you went through your divorce, you say that there were some financial surprises for you. What were those? And let us
Absolutely.
know.
Absolutely. So, going through the divorce, first of all, there was just so many financial surprises. And I was thinking to myself, okay, I've been in the financial industry for, but at that time I'd probably been in, 10, 12 years. And here I am not 100% sure. What do we do with the assets? What do we do with the liabilities? How do we tackle the mortgage? How do we, I was really struggling to figure out all these things. And also, he took care of our taxes. So, I was self-employed, 100% commission. He took care of the taxes. And so, as we proceeded through the divorce, and it was a very amicable divorce, I didn't take over my own taxes. I didn't take over quarterly filing or payroll, really any of that, because I had no idea what he was doing. I didn't know how to do it. And I was grieving and dealing with all of this. And honestly, I stuck my head in the sand and just chose not to deal with my taxes.
And you know what, though? It's important when you're going through so much and you're going through a lot of grieving and you're going through so much change. That's the time when you have to ask for help, not the time that you ostrich it, right?
And this is why, I'm so glad we're talking about this, because I'm hoping that there's other people here going, okay, Taz was in the finance industry and she did it. Okay. So I'm not that unique. I'm not that, but hopefully we can save you from doing it much longer. I hope, exactly like you said, that is the time that you reach out, but also knowing, who do you reach out to?
Mm-hmm.
I had a friend who was a CDFA, and thank God she saved me from making a lot of mistakes.
Wait, what's a CDFA? Step back for a second.
A certified divorce financial analyst.
Okay.
So we were having a very amicable divorce all the way through until there was this one sticking point, and it was over $10,000. And thank goodness I spoke to her and I was like, that's it. It's not about the $10,000. It's the principle of the matter. And now I'm going to, fight him for everything. And she's like, Do you really want to spend 50,000 or 60,000 or 100,000 on legal fees for $10,000? Like 10 years from now, is this going to matter? And thank God, I didn't pursue that. So I did reach out for some help, but I was so embarrassed. I was so ashamed that here I was in the banking industry, in the mortgage industry, and didn't know what to do with my taxes.
So it's important to talk about this, and it's important to get help, because a lot of people stay away from help and think, I can't afford good help, or I don't know where to go. But you've just proven that, ask the right questions and you'll get the proper help. We will be right back with more on Taz and her incredible journey. Welcome back to Empowered with Elizabeth Naumovski, where we're discussing a personal journey of debt, bankruptcy, and revival. So, Taz, what was the critical incident that caused you to become overwhelmed by your debt?
So as I had said earlier, I, stuck my head in the sand as far as the taxes go. I was self-employed, and obviously in the heydays, I was making good money. And so not filing taxes, CRA kind of just assesses you, right? So I had about 80,000 owing to Canada Revenue for my taxes, which I was working on slowly paying down. But that I had left the financial industry. I was now in the travel industry again, 100% commission. The money, the travel is great, but the money is really not there in the travel industry.
Can I just step back for a second? Because this is really important. There are a lot of people who work in commission industries. There are a lot of people who will get a bonus and want the entire bonus to be paid out 100%. But then you have to pay that 50% or whatever it is to the tax man at the end. So I've always thought that if you get a bonus, take 50% of it, because that way you don't have to scramble. And it's the same thing when you're working in a commission industry. You've got to put money aside for the tax man.
Exactly. And that is what you would normally do in a business, or that's what we should be doing for sure. And I knew better. So let's be clear. I definitely knew better. I wasn't necessarily doing better. Mm-hmm. And as a travel agent, honestly, I'd already started draining my RSPs and my savings, and it's going to take time to build up. So here I was, new in the travel industry and driving to go do some training. And I was rear-ended at high speed. I saw him coming even before he hit me, and I remember screaming. It felt like something out of Fast and Furious. So lucky to even be alive. But as you can imagine, I had a severe concussion. I had lots of bruises. And so sitting up was difficult, let alone dealing with, insurance claims and doctor's offices and trying to work. I really could not work. Every time I would try to sit up and face the computer, I'd be nauseous. And, my brain fog was horrible. I couldn't remember simple things. Well, the bills still have to get paid. They don't, your utilities company, they don't really care. They care, but they don't, the bills have to get paid. So the bills start mounting up. And I'll never forget this one phone call. It was with, I think it was NMAX. And I'm sobbing. I was just so emotional because I'm like, what can I do? I'm not bringing in income. I'm using up all of my savings. I'm scraping it together, barely making payments. And I said, I might have to declare bankruptcy. And this is why I was crying, because I was like, oh my God, coming from the banking and mortgage world, we were always taught bankruptcy was like the devil. It's like the worst thing you can do. And so I'm crying to her saying, I might have to declare bankruptcy. And she says to me, if you can't pay this bill, you can't afford to go bankrupt. And I was just devastated, just devastated. And then I did eventually, go see a licensed insolvency trustee, and we went through all my numbers, and it did end up making sense for me to declare bankruptcy. But that was that pivotal point. And that's what, we will often see. And I think it's so easy to sit in our glass houses and judge. We hear quite often, and maybe I would have said this earlier, that people are just not managing their money, or they just don't budget, or they just don't have an insurance, or they don't have an emergency fund. But in reality, it's usually, there is this kind of a tipping point. There's usually a critical thing that will happen, a car accident, disability, critical illness, a divorce, or job loss, COVID would be another one, that puts us over the edge. Like, we're probably already living at or above our means. And sure, you could do better. We could all do better on that. But I think majority of Canadians live that way. And then there's something like that, that'll be that trigger, and that'll put us over from juggling and managing our debts to just being completely overwhelmed by our debt.
Well, health, anything emotional, triggers so much in us, whether it's a divorce, an accident, which you had all of them, actually. You had the trifecta, right? You just kept accumulating.
Exactly.
But it's difficult to deal with one, but when you're dealing with so many compounded things, you talked about the brain fog. I totally get it. It's hard to wrap your brain around certain things and get out unscathed.
Yes, absolutely. I couldn't remember, simple things. And it was very devastating to my ego, having been in the finance industry that long and needing to see somebody about my debt.
So when we come back, we'll keep continuing with Taz and her story, because you know what? It actually ends on a high point, and it's a very positive story to end with. So don't go away. Welcome back to Empowered with Elizabeth Naumovski, where we're discussing a personal journey of debt, bankruptcy, and revival. And I can't wait to talk to you about the revival. However, before we get there, how did filing for bankruptcy impact you?
I would say the biggest impact was to my ego and my self-image, right? And as you were saying in the beginning, that is exactly how I felt. I felt like I'm the only person who's this poor with money. I'm the only one that's this far in debt. I'm the only one who can't figure this out. Everyone else has it together. Something is wrong with me. What is wrong with me? I am so, the self-talk was horrible, Liz. You're stupid. You're a failure. How could you respectfully be in the finance industry and declare bankruptcy? So I went through that journey for sure. Of course, filing for bankruptcy, or, a really powerful alternative is consumer proposal, but both of those, they do impact your credit. So of course it impacted my credit as well. So my credit score, my ability to apply for credit right away. Something else that it did as well, it took a huge burden off of my shoulders. Like, honestly, it felt like the world was on my shoulders. And once I signed in and we kind of got started on that process, I just felt such a sense of relief.
Because you had a solution.
You had an answer, you had a solution, the debt is taken care of, and you can figure out a plan to move forward.
You talked about self-talk, and I think as women, we are so bad at self-talk. How many times do we, win an award or get rewarded with something? It's like, why me? I didn't do anything. But that negativity in our head, it just keeps spiraling in there. And the thing with self-talk is nobody else can hear you. You're the only one who can hear it, and you're the only one that's putting yourself down. So that's one thing that we really, really, really need to stop doing for ourselves. But now to the big positive part. Where are you financially today?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think just back to the self-talk, it comes to normalizing these conversations. So I'm glad that you're doing a segment like this so we can start to normalize this conversation. So today I own a home and have a mortgage at a great interest rate. It wasn't the very, very best rate, but it was pretty darn close. I have 2 credit cards in my own name that are no longer secured, that are at, again, good interest rates. And honestly, I have the highest credit score I've ever had in my life.
That's amazing.
It's crazy. So there really is life after debt. And I find that generally when people go through a program like a consumer proposal or a bankruptcy, it really is a reset. And it's something you're never going you don't want to be a repeat customer on that. And so a lot of times it's you knew what to do. You weren't necessarily doing it. Maybe you weren't doing it consistently. So for me, I definitely knew. And for a lot of people, they don't know. I did know what needed to be done. I needed that reset. I wasn't going to get out from under that debt just trying to make the minimum payments or hoping that, okay, a windfall is going to come in, I'm going to make some good money. I'm in a great place right now financially, even just in terms of the income. I've been able to generate other types of income. But life is good. Life gets better once you get that stuff taken care of.
Yeah, that's amazing. Now we have a minute left, and I have two questions for you. Number one,
Okay.
you're at Bromwich+Smith, and you are so passionate about what you do, which I love. So tell us about why you're so passionate about it.
Absolutely. Well, Bromwich+Smith, we're licensed insolvency trustees. We help Canadians that are overwhelmed by debt with one of two federally legislated programs. So there's lots of other things out there. People often will go straight to their bank or they'll go to, a debt management company. But a federally legislated licensed insolvency trustee is the governed debt exit program here in Canada. And there are some really big advantages of working with a trustee. And that's why I am so passionate, because a big part of my role is to educate Canadians on, okay, what's a trustee? What's a consumer proposal? What's a bankruptcy? How do they impact you? And how do you rebuild and thrive after?
So I am so thrilled that you and I got a chance to talk about this and got a little bit of bonding time today too.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for being brave and sharing your story today, Taz. I really appreciate it. Whether you're a new Canadian, first generation, second, or 10th generation, money has different effects on everyone. The key is to take action and deal with your situation rather than ignore it and pretend that it'll go away, because it won't. Take control of your money and finances sooner than later. And if you need to seek professional help, do it. I'm Elizabeth Naumovski. I'm here to empower you and make frugality fashionable. Bye for now.